It is International Women's Month, and today we're looking at a study by the World Economic Forum that's focusing on closing the gap between men and women in the workplace, because this has huge economic impact for developing countries in particular. In the United States, GDP, for example, can get a boost of as much as 9% if women are included in the workforce more, according to this study from the World Economic Forum. Now, they looked at 600 companies in 20 different countries, and we're going to get some of the detail from that from Sadia Zahedi, director at the WEF, at the World Economic Forum. You're also one of the authors of this report. So tell me, oftentimes, whenever any kind of action that's billed as affirmative action or anything that's billed as, women-focused is brushed aside, right, as sort of soft, as touchy-feely. But you found direct economic impact when it comes to integrating women into the workforce. Tell me that.
Exactly. So women make up 1/2 of the potential workforce that's available to any economy. We also know, particularly in this country, women are actually starting to be much higher numbers of women university graduates than men are. So you've got all this human capital, and you've got almost 50% at the entry level in most companies, but then they're not going all the way up to the top. That basically means that the best ideas are not making it all the way up to the top of companies.
So where does the U.S. stack up versus some of the European counterparts, some of the other developed countries?
So overall, just in terms of the sheer numbers of women that are in these companies, the U.S. is actually the highest. But then when you look at the ladder, you look at the entire corporate ladder and you see the numbers at middle management, at senior management, at the board of directors level, and at CEO level, they're actually, in the case of CEO level, none in the companies that we surveyed. And there's this pyramid that basically gets smaller and smaller and smaller the further up you go.
They're stuck in sort of middle management positions. Why is that?
So that's the other half of the survey. So we wanted to find out, what are companies actually doing to change this? And one of the first things that you can do is actually measure, set some targets. And what we found is 64% of companies do not have any form of targets to try to increase those numbers. And the second thing we found is 72% of companies don't track any salary gaps at all. Half of them because they believe that there are no salary gaps, which we know isn't true, and half of them because they simply feel it isn't important. So unless you've got those targets, that measurement in place, it's going to be very hard to change.
Now, coming out of this crisis, there's so much focus on the labor market in particular, on simply getting a job regardless of gender. How are women stacking up versus men?
So we actually asked the heads of HR of 600 of the biggest companies in the world, what do you think the effects of the economic downturn will be on women versus men? And what we found is countries like France and Mexico and Spain and the United Kingdom, they actually thought it would be much worse for women. About 20 to 30% of them thought that it would be much worse for women than for men. Now that just goes to show, if you're still thinking about women as a sort of luxury good, to be integrated when times are good but to be discarded when times are bad, then that's what happens. Whereas in other countries, we found that there wouldn't be a gap, and that's because these countries are rightly so looking at women as a resource that needs to be incorporated if we're going to be coming out of the crisis faster.
Well, it's something we're going to continue to track here. Thank you for running us through this analysis, Sadia, of the World Economic Forum.